So when I was at Citibank, this was 1993 or 94, I had made up my mind that I would not leave Pakistan because I'd come back after 13 or 14 years. And for a variety of reasons, I had decided that we would stay here as a family. And that obviously didn't work for somebody like Citibank because they need people to move around the world, and I wasn't prepared to do that. So I guess the first hard moment for me was when I wasn't made the country head and somebody else was, who was a great guy, a good friend of mine. But those things hurt. So you come to that realization that, okay, you have to accept that you took a conscious decision and communicated that decision that, look, I'm not leaving. So you must understand then that the corporation has to do what it thinks is right for itself. And you can't be down about that then. So yeah, you get down and then you have to slap yourself in the face and say, well, this is something you wanted to do. So now you got to face up to it. But when I look back in retrospect, that was the best decision, the best thing that ever happened to me and the best decision that I took. Because I then left Citibank and we started our stockbroking company and then investment banking, and then we bought a commercial bank and we bought 5 or 6 other banks. I would never have had that opportunity of that journey if that thing hadn't happened, which was hard for me. But it was one of the biggest propulsions that I ever got in my life, that, it gave me a purpose of doing something completely different. And that was the journey of my destiny, but there's no way I would have known that when I was happily working away in Citibank in some country or the other. So that was one tough moment in my life of leadership, or whatever you want to call it. I think the second thing was when we had bought Pickwick to discover how much stuff came out of it that wasn't there when we were doing our due diligence. And then when some of the regulations changed, soon after we bought the bank, in terms of the State Bank altered some of the provisioning requirements, we suddenly had a huge hole in this balance sheet of a bank we just bought and actually saved from collapse. And that was a body blow that the bank never really recovered from, because we had to pump in a lot of capital. And banks are a form of trust, really. Once you get dented and damaged, it's really hard to build. We, as you know, you might remember, we were very much focused on the consumer and SME sector. In fact, we were the only ones putting in SME models at really small businesses, middle-sized businesses. And you kind of go into a perfect storm. So we bought in 2007, 2008, the world collapsed. Interest rates went up in Pakistan. There were massive credit defaults. And people in Pakistan, unfortunately, don't have a great sense of responsibility when they're borrowing money. I'm talking about some of the middle-sized companies and smaller ones. They just gave up and said, well, you've got our asset, take it and do what you want with it. So that those 2-3 years were extremely difficult as well, because I felt like I was in a punching bag and everybody who could take a punch at us was taking it. And to hold the team together was extremely challenging, because you can imagine how depressed people were, when we were making losses, because banks are not expected to make losses in Pakistan, because banks make their money on deposits. They don't really make their money on the asset side of the business. We were asset focused, and we had a hole in the balance sheet where people had defaulted. So holding people together was hard, very hard. We had scaled up the bank by a few thousand people over a period of a few months. And then we realized that cost base was just not sustainable. So letting people go was really hard, because these were people who, were relying on their family, their livelihood, on decisions we were taking. Not we as management, but the board, shareholders. We obviously, the board takes decisions and we implement, and so we were all in it together. But the brunt of the public facing is with the senior management and eventually with the CEO. So what did I learn from that? I learned from that you have to accept your destiny. Because if you sit there and start moping about it and say, if this had happened, if that, no, but it didn't happen. That was your destiny and that was your fate. And you have to take it on the chin and smile and carry on. And realize that, okay, this was not meant to be. So I have maybe that spiritual connection. And I said it wasn't meant to be. Was it something that we didn't do or didn't want to do? No, nothing like that. We had a great team, we had great people. It just wasn't meant to be. So the confluence of so many factors was almost as if the universe was conspiring to make it not happen. And maybe there was something great out of that as well. So I certainly came out a better person with much more humility than I went into it. And maybe that was, God's way of teaching me some humility.